It's more like you need to get there like a personal contact number, and then you can really reach out to the correct person. So that's very different because how come you can get like a private information from like somebody else? So it makes this even like a marketing activity is really different.
Välkommen. Bem-vindo. Witamy. 欢迎.
Welcome to the Blend Podcast. Fresh, fun, informative. This is your backstage pass for exclusive language industry news and views, interviews with leaders, translators, and pros, and insights on the intersection of words, business, and culture. And now, here's your host, Ronnie.
Hi everyone, welcome back to our podcast. My guest in this episode is Ann Chen, head of APAC here at Blend. Having based in China and working in the localization business for years, Ann will talk about the challenges of localization in the Asian market and will share some valuable tips. Enjoy!
Okay. Hi everyone, welcome back to our podcast. Our guest today is Ann Chen, who is the head of APAC here at Blend. Ann is part of our sales team and she's based in Shanghai. And is our expert in connecting East and West in our company. And she just recently visited us in Israel, but she's in Berlin already. So, Anne, you travel all over the world. So we're going to talk about that. So let's just start with you kind of introducing yourself a little bit. It'll be interesting to know your background, your journey, how you found yourself in this localization world. So we'd love to hear.
Okay. Right. Okay. So thank you, Ronnie, for the introduction. And this is very hard for me to introduce myself. It's always hard for me to do that. But then, anyways, my name is Ann, and I work in this industry for already like 12 years now. I think probably even more than that. So, and I graduated as a translation student from the UK, and so then later I was started also a freelance translator, but then somehow I wasn't really understand the whole process. So I made some jokes during this translator journey. So then later I started to join the company and start to really learn all this proper process from the agencies.
Yeah, that's interesting that you kind of started of being a translator and then find yourself kind of on the other side. And can you share a little bit of what's your education? What was it that kind of drew you into working on this side of the localization industry versus, being a translator? Mm-hmm. Entire world of challenges and kind of like things that are totally different from what you're actually doing at the moment.
Yeah, in the beginning when I was a translator, because, people graduated from these translation studies, we don't really understand, what to do after graduation, because my generation was a bit still it's very academic level. So we wrote a lot of essays and to try to understand all different theories, but not like actual practical knowledge about what the agencies are doing. So I started as a translator and I start to reach out to the agency and I start to to promote myself and start to get some project. But then somehow one time as a gaming client, and then they asked me to translate millions of words or something, and I told them I can do myself. So they were like, so do you have a team or and then I told them, I said, I'm a one person, but I believe I can do this 1 million words for your project. So they start to feel is there's something wrong? How come one person can manage the whole this? And I wasn't still so proud of myself. And I say, you know what? I can do translation and editing at the same time. And they were like, what? And I said, yeah, why not? And then, and then later they said, so how's your, what's your output per day? And I said, well, I can just, keep working until I feel tired. So, all this unprofessional conversation, then, of course, they don't reach out to me in the end. So that point made me feel okay, probably I really need to go deeper about this whole industry. So so that's it. That's why I started with the agencies based in Taiwan, and I started as a project manager, and then later becomes a salesperson.
Yeah, really interesting kind to see kind of transition from a translator and then to the other side. And also what you just said, it's a lot of pain points for the
Yeah.
translators. You know, me, I'm head of community here at Blend, and we see what you just said comes up in our community forum quite a lot. So it's really interesting to kind of hear the other side. Um, and also, can you speak a little bit about what your position at Blend is very unique? Can you speak a little bit about what it is that you do? You know, you don't have to say obviously names of clients if we can't say names, but
Yeah.
kind of like what it mostly is your position at Blend and the clients and kind of the challenges that you hear from your clients, which is a little bit different from other clients we have. So,
I started as a salesperson and tried to find a new client based in APAC market for Blend, because Blend at that moment wanted to like expand the business in Asia as well, and because we had like some successful like projects which is based in Asia, so that's why we feel like there's more opportunity and potential in this market. So that's the reason why we start like hire people in this region. But of course this is very challenging. It's not just a challenge to the foreign companies, but it's also challenges to me, because it's really different than the other regions that I used to do. And of course I always focus on this APAC market, but then most of the time previously I was focused in Taiwan's market. So because I'm from Taiwan, so that will be I think somehow, of course, we speak the same language and so like a same cultural background, but it's like all this business pitch is a little bit different. For example, like in China, they don't. They don't have like a receptionist, this type of like a job function. So it's very hard. Like you just go search online and to see the like a phone number or something, and then you can call to the company and try to find the person that you want to reach out. It's more like you need to get there like a personal contact number, and then you can really reach out to the correct person. So that's very different, because how come we can get like a private information from like somebody else? So it also makes the marketing activity a little bit different than the other regions. Like we really need to schedule like some offline event, or we have to go to some conferences more than other regions. So because that's the way we can really get some like a personal information from our potential clients.
So you feel like this is more of the Asian culture, that it's a little bit more, it's different from other clients, because here in Israel usually we don't, we will close things online very, very quickly, deals and stuff like that. So it is interesting what you're saying about need, like the clients in that market needs this personal connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very different, and then somehow it's also a little bit different. Like some of them, they don't like to speak on the phone, So that's also the other reason why this like a face-to-face conference or meetings will be like a more it's more efficiency to to generate the leads.
Yeah. And do you feel like it's kind of help you that you said you're originally from Taiwan and you're based in China, so obviously you speak the language. Do you feel like it is something that helps with local clients, that you speak their language, their culture, you're one of them, you're not a bunch of Israelis, a totally different culture, that as some of the people that hear us know, and if not, I'll say that Blend is an Israeli based company, so we have people all over the world, we have offices, sites all over the world, but our base is in Israel, like our leadership is mostly Israeli. So do you feel like this is something that benefits you in this with those clients, that you are from their culture? What do you think about that?
I think the language is actually like a key element that the client would like to share with you more or talk to you more. And because of course we all speak Mandarin here, so it's easy for them to share more with you guys. It's like if it's a foreign company and talking English, of course some of the Chinese, they would like to speak English as well, and most of like big companies, they can speak English, but the problem is it's actually we want to earn money from them, so they don't they actually doing their favor to speak in like English. So that's why I think if you can So if you can really speak the language, then I think that's really like like a key element to get like a more possibility to work with the local clients.
It's really, really good, interesting point what you say that most of us are not native English, but we spend, especially in, different, like in specific industries, kind of like, localization, but also me coming from the tech industry in Israel, most of the time we speak English, but it's not
Yeah.
our native language. So sometimes you just need to speak in your own language, and
Yeah.
I think it's a good point. It's also a good tip. We will get to tips later to localization managers, but this is really good tips. Kind of have like the local person who understands the language, but also the culture, right?
Yeah.
If I understand you correctly. Yeah.
Yeah. And also
And
that in
this
that
is
way you
actually,
can.
yeah,
Oh no,
go ahead.
I'm just saying like in that way you can use the correct and accurate way to pitch your client, because also it will relate with the business concept. So yeah, I mean culture, language, everything is actually kind of the ecosystem.
I 100% agree, and I feel like we see that mostly in companies that are globals, and we have here in Blend we have teams in Israel, and then you have your small team in China, and we have teams in Kiev and teams in Romania and teams in the United States. We do feel the culture differences. It is something
Yeah.
that we feel, so it is extremely interesting kind of to have this in mind when coming to clients. Which kind of brings me to my next point with something that is unique to you, because you have really this really, special background, and you're working with, again, a bunch of Israelis. So how is your experience? Because again, kind of like with your clients, if you're coming from one culture, working with a very different culture. I think Israelis and Chinese people are very, very different in, manners and culture and a lot of things. So how is that experience to you? You've been working with Glenn for like over 2 years, so
Yeah.
assuming it's a good experience. But I would love to hear how did you felt kind of like the language barriers, the culture barriers? How like was it at the beginning, and how is it now?
Well, I don't know, because most of the time I work for the foreign agencies like Relocalize and RWS. So I most of the time I actually work with the different cultures, people. So somehow, and probably because I studied in the UK before, so I don't feel like
Oh,
barrier between all these conversations. So to me, I feel it's quite easy to adapting. I don't really feel like, oh my god, my colleagues are like crazy or whatever. It's like it's
loud.
actually yeah, it's actually all right, and for me to really adapt in this well, in our community, I have to say in that way. And so yeah, so to me this is really not like a not an issue. I kind of
Yeah.
I feel it's easy to like fit in. So
That's good to hear. Because it's not always easy working with Israelis. And I know from the other side, for me, it took me a while kind of to get used to work with people. Because, in my previous jobs, mostly worked with Americans. So it took me a while to learn
okay.
how to communicate, with other
Hmm.
cultures. So I
Right.
think it's one of the things I love the most about Blend, I have to say, that we're kind of a bunch of people from all over.
Yeah, from
Yeah,
different. Yeah, yeah.
very,
That's
very
great.
diverse.
Yeah.
It is very
Hmm.
diverse. So this is great. And then kind of leads me to my next question. Can kind of hear from your side that what do you feel like the biggest differences between Asian clients and other clients, and kind of like what is kind of the challenges that they bring? It's interesting to hear for me when Asian clients kind of want to localize to different languages, what mostly is the challenges and they're facing, and also vice versa, because I know you also work with the other side with Western companies want to localize to Asian markets. So can you talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that, kind of like the big challenges on both sides, and what is the things that people listening to us kind of thinking maybe it's about time we kind of enter those markets? What should they kind of mostly think about?
I actually think it's always difficult for people who wants to enter like a different markets. For example, like right now, if it's like the Western clients wants to enter, for example, like a China market or Japan's market or Korea market, then it will be completely like a three different ways to enter these target markets at all. So this is how like diverse in Asia. Like each country has its culture background and everything. So and also I think everybody knows about China right now. Like we have so many like different marketing channels like Xiaohongshu, Weibo, WeChat, TikTok, everything.
Which are
like
all unique to China.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you really, for example, like the brand wants to get in this market, then probably they will start with TikTok first, but then later they figure out, oh, there's another one called Xiaohongshu. They can also sell stuff on that platform, and they don't have it, but the others, they do have this channel as well, so they also need to do this channel together. So then it's like you have to put a lot of investments in this market in order to cover everything and start to be like really localized in this market and to sell your product or service. So this is the things I feel like is very difficult for the foreign companies to really understand all these marketing activities in China.
And that's only that's just China.
That's only China, yeah.
Exactly. So if you want to kind of do China and Japan, totally different markets, and that's how you should refer to it.
Yeah, it's completely different. For example, like we use Baidu in China, but then if you go to Korea, they use Never. Yeah, they use Never. I think I hope I pronounce it right, but it's another like a website. And then if you go to Japan, then you use Yahoo more. So it's like even like all this internet browser is different. But if it's in West, and then everybody actually use Google, you can just pay for Google and for all these advertisement. But in like Asia, it's like it's completely different. So that's what I feel is also difficult for the foreigners to come to China market. But for the Chinese clients go abroad, also difficult. And it's not just difficult to go the Western world, but also difficult to go to other like Asian markets as well, because all this legal regulation is very hard to understand from like each market. And to the West, of course, it's like a complete different mindset. So it's like, for example, like an Asian culture is like, if I have like 100 services, I would like to promote hundreds of them to let people know it's like I can do everything. But this is kind of not the mindset, to locate in like this Western world, because you focus on you focus on you focus one professionals and want to do just the one thing into like a super professional way. So you will not like to receive the message like there's an agency who can provide all kinds of services, because to the Western clients this is not true. It's kind of this is kind of just not real, not practical. So this is somehow is very difficult for the Chinese clients to do their marketing outside of China. And also from the business way, it's also like very hard for them to talk to like a Western clients, because they don't know how to speaking they don't know how to pitch in some like a professional like a business way. They will also like to tell you like they don't want to build a relationship, start like a friendship. They will like really see you just a client and start to tell you, say, like, hey, Ronnie, I can do translation, localization. I can also do voiceover, blah, blah, blah. They will just like give you too much. They will not start with all this relationship building. So this is something I feel it's very difficult. It's very different, and it's also very complex.
Yes, which kind of brings me to one of the other questions that we have, which kind of like about the culture. So from what you're saying, it sounds like it's very, very important then coming to the Asian market, and I know like whole, but then also kind of if you're targeting China, for example, so you need to kind of do a lot of research about the culture. Okay, so we were talking about some tips about kind of like the differences between Western and Asian cultures. Start saying how, when you, first of all, you said that there's difference between the countries and you shouldn't kind of look at it as Asian market, but, choose the countries that you want to target. Is it China? Is it Japan? Is it, Korea? And then learn their habits, right? So we start talking about that. So if you have some tips and stuff like that, companies should know before working with.
If you ask me about some tips like to work in China, then I think to get in China market, then I would say definitely needs to hire somebody local and hire somebody speak the same language, hire somebody who knows the culture, and also hire somebody who is like literally live in China, not like not like outside of China and just speak the same language and you think like it works, because it doesn't. You really needed to have somebody who is actually living in this like this land. Then it will be much easier to really get into like a more deeper conversation with the Chinese clients. So that's definitely the first priority. And if we talk about the other tips, then it will be like other like a marketing like a strategy, because marketing strategy is also very important in this like a Chinese market.
And
if you're
different.
not famous enough, and different.
Yeah.
If you're not famous enough, then nobody will buy from your brand. So branding is very, also the key thing in China.
Yeah.
So that's why you can see all these luxury brands are very successful in this market.
Right.
But if you're talking about, like other service type of the companies, then you really need to build your brand. Otherwise, nobody will buy the service or anything from all these unknown brands.
Yeah, those are actually really, really good tips. And when it comes to building a team of, translators or, content writers, whatever it is that you need for localization, what will be the best tips that you have from your experience on that?
Well, this is also that I learned from my previous, like all these agencies. Is like they start, like even like my first agencies that I work for. I mean, the founder was the professor himself to teach in the university, which is like translation studies. And then so he actually picked up all these translators on his own and to train them to become a proper translator, and then later train them to become like the proper editors. So like this cooperation between like a corporate and education, like all these universities, is also one of the tips that I feel like everybody should like learn from it, because then this is a really good way to start to build all your like a translator pool and start to like evaluate who is who is actually good for which position. So probably some of the students, they can also do sales, or they can also do project management. So and some of them, So I think that's a really great tip for like everybody who wants to get in this localization industry.
That's some really, really good tips. I do have another question that I forgot to ask you.
Sure.
Do you see some kind of trend in let me see how I wrote it exactly. Oh, do you see some trends in technology companies in Asia? And then the markets they're kind of looking to enter to, because from our side as well, we do get a lot of Asian companies who kind of expertise our gaming coming to us to kind of localize to Western companies. But what is the trend that you see on both sides, by the way, like Asia to Western and then the other way around? That is interesting. I feel like a lot of times the Asian market is kind of like the trendsetter, and then a couple of years later, the rest of the world kind of catch up, kind of like what happened with gaming and stuff like that. So interesting to hear what you think.
Right, I think actually some of the reason behind of this is it was because of some like regulation. So before the government kind of they did not like publish like the proper all these publishing numbers to the gaming clients. That's why for a while like everybody was kind of quiet. But after they started to provide all these publishing numbers, then of course like everybody actually they are ready. They have the products, they have the games already. So they just need to wait all this like a proper regulation like finalized, and then they can start to like launch all their products. So That's actually the reason why there was like a little bit quiet before.
Yeah.
So yeah, they are always ready. And for the technology, I actually like to share like Chinese clients. They do have a very strong technology concept. So for example, we have a lot of like machine translation companies. They actually produce this proper machine translation, which can do proper for the Asian languages. Because if you go like to the Western, like these MTN like agencies. Some of them actually they have some difficulties about Asian languages.
Yeah.
It's easy for them to do like like Western languages from each other, but it's difficult to like from English to the other Asian languages. But this is actually something. You can find proper like agencies in China who can already produce like a great output from this machine engine. So. And most of the big companies they train their own engines internally. So from this technology side, I feel like Chinese clients, they are actually ready and they are also open to learn more, to upgrade their own technology as well. So it's I think this is something probably also a little bit new to the Western clients, or to the new like Western agencies.
Yeah. It's really interesting, and I was just thinking about something else. Do you see like more companies kind of try now, Western companies trying to enter the Asian market, following a lot, because there's a lot of like kind of like the Asian pop culture that I feel like entering the Western side of the world more recently in the last couple of years. I think Netflix probably is a big influence, with Squid Game from Korea, which was a major hit. And then I've just recently saw that they did a Korean, I think it's Korean or Japanese version of Money Heist, the Spanish TV hit. So do you
The
feel
Korean one,
the Korean one? Well, I haven't watched it yet. This is still the promo, by the way. It looks really good. But that's really a great example for localization, because from the promo you could see that they changed the story a little bit, because the story now needs to fit. And I think you and I discussed that already. And the story now needs to fit a totally different audience, but also different culture, because what works for, kind of Latin audience does not necessarily works for Asian culture. So do you feel like there's kind of like more kind of wants to enter those, markets based on all of this kind of like pop culture that recently become big in Western companies?
To me, I always think like Japan or Korea, they always want to, get in like other markets abroad, not just like a domestic market. So to me, it's what they're doing actually always. And Koreans, I don't know. I think Koreans they have like a great marketing strategy and concept. So yeah, I have to say they're really good at that. So I mean, Squid Game. They are. So I mean, because of that, so I feel like this Squid Games is really like a like a powerful message to the world, and to tell everybody and say, hey, you know what, we can also like develop. Yeah. Otherwise, if you ask me, then I already read some type of the same same as this Squid Games back in my like a school time, which is from the Japanese comic. So so to me, this is not like, oh my god, the first time I see this this storyline or something. To me, I just feel like, hey, come on, this is a little bit similar than that Japanese one. So this is that's why I feel like a Korean, they're really good at all this marketing strategies, and they understand how to really reach to the global market and make it like so that's what I feel.
It's for me an eye opener, because I shared with you, I visit Korea, and I feel like I'm kind of knowledgeable on this market. I am not. I know that. and then when Squid Game just premiered on Netflix, I was like, what is this? I was like, I'm not so sure. It's so different, and they speak Korean. And again, I watch TV show and movies in other languages other than my native Hebrew, but Korean was like not sure about that, and then just started watching because the hype was so big and just that book. But it is interesting to me because it's so different from everything that I'm familiar with as, an Israeli, kind of someone who lives a little bit of the American culture, let's say. So it is, I do find it kind of like a big challenge to kind of make
Yeah.
that jump. And I feel like a lot of our clients, in gaming, a lot of the time, it's like this is the big challenge, kind of to bridge the gap. And maybe what you need to do is not bridging the gap, which is exactly what Squid Game did. They just, put Korea as it is, and it works amazingly. So I'm just thinking out loud. It
Yeah.
is fascinating.
Yeah. So I'm agree with you. So yeah, but I mean, China right now also they want to get to like approach this global market more than before. It's because I think the domestic market probably kind of full right now. That's why they try to find more opportunities outside of China. Otherwise, if you ask me, because I start to attend China Joy the first year they started in China, and at that moment I tried to pitch some of the clients, and all these gaming clients says no, we don't need to go abroad because it's enough for us to earn money from this domestic market. So I was like, all right, so gaming probably there's no potential. But then after like just 3 years, and then they start to reach out to all these agencies, and they want to know all this localization method, and they also want to understand more like how to reach out to other market. So that's the point. I feel like at some point, definitely if you are the corporate, you will definitely want to expand your business somewhere else. You're not going to stay in one market forever. Otherwise, it will be just like SMB or SME. But if you want to be the enterprise size, then you definitely need more than one market. Even this is big enough in China, but still, there's something else that you can also focus on. So yeah, that's also one of the changes that I feel recently in this China market.
Do you feel like do you can have idea why these changes happen now? Is it something that is kind of related maybe to the last couple of years has been a struggle for the entire world, or is it just kind of like time changes and this is what leads? Because us as kind of the residents of the world have all gone through a lot of crisis after crisis after crisis in the last couple of years, which was a little bit different from other crises because everyone in the world, no matter where they are, locally felt that big crisis. So I'm just thinking, I'm just wondering if you feel like there's something to do with that, or now solution, or.
I actually think this global crisis is the same. This is the only one thing that share with the whole world. So everybody actually feels the same economy, or this war in Ukraine, or like COVID issue.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So all this is actually the same crisis everywhere.
Yeah. I feel like that's probably it. Because again, it's one thing after another, nonstop for the last couple of years.
So the crisis is really not about the culture anymore. It's really just like this is the global thing. This is a global issue. Like everybody actually faces the same.
That's true. We do feel it also in our local market here in Israel. So I assume everyone feels it in their local country. Okay. Thank you, Anne, so much for this lovely chat. And thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. If you are a localization manager, very welcome to join our Facebook group, Pro Localization Managers, specifically for localization managers. So see you there. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Stay tuned for the next episode by following us on social media. If you're in the localization business, join our private Facebook group, Pro Localization Club. See you there.
Thanks for tuning in to the Blend podcast. Follow Blend on social for updates and future episodes. We'll see you next time.